How you doing? So today we're going to be going over the meta tier list for end of February going to the March season. So one thing to keep in mind is that the OTA changes changed some impactful cards, Darkhawk and LockJaw in particular. So I recorded the data, or I took the data before the changes, so you're going to have to keep that in mind, but let's get started. Hello, so we have our meta tier list for the March season. So this is just something I've been doing every month for a while, for a couple months now, where we just collect the data throughout the month for the lists and we make a tier list off of that. So we have the standard list, which is the most common list. We have the win rate list, which is the one that usually has the best win rate, best average cube usually, things like that. And then we have the data compared to last month. So you'll be seeing how things go up and down throughout the months as people play different cards get nerfed, metagame changes, things like that. It's been fun for me to collect, though it is a little bit of work, but let's get started. So I do have some changes from last month. The criteria has changed a little bit. So before, our criteria was 55% to 58%. I've changed it to 56%. And the main reason is our tier 3 was 52 to 52, and it was just awkward because it felt arbitrary that that was the only one with 1%. So added extra percentage there and then took it out of the tier 1, and it still has pretty clear tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 3s even without that. Then it's ordered by popularities in tiers. So the first tier is not going to be the highest win rate archetype. It's going to be the most popular archetype within that tier, so that's something to keep in mind. Another thing is that the collection level changed. So we use untapped data. Untapped data changed. It used to be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. It changed to 2,000, 4,000, 6,000. So generally what happens is the higher collection that is being tracked, the better you are as a player on average. As you play more, you get better, and usually their win rates will be better. So from 3,000, we're moving to 4,000. There is a 6,000 option. I'm not using that yet. I might move next month from 4,000 to 6,000, but I wanted to get the closest between months and to scale upwards. So the data wasn't too drastic. It's just that basically all the numbers are better because the players are better. So this is still just kind of giving us a pretty accurate rating, but still closer to what we had previously. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then generally, these are just some more examples. We'll have our win rates, popularity, average cubes, and then we'll have whether it went up from last month, around the same, or down from last month. And we'll have like double arrows if it's like very high, things like that. I'll try to keep in mind. So that's just an example. And then one other thing to keep in mind with this is that the OTA patch affected many decks. So it took more than 1 day to collect this data. So I still have a lot of the decks have the old stats. So I still have like 3-2 LockJaw. I still have 4-0 Darkhawk. Obviously, those decks are going to be affected by these OTA changes, but that always happens. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at these decks. Like, hey, these are still using old OTA numbers just because that's when the data was collected. And I'm not, that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so first off, we have the tier 0, so that's 59 plus or above. So third month in a row, I think there's none in here with 59% tier rating, and I agree with this. I don't think there's a deck that is that overwhelmingly powerful, things like that, right? Like you really have to be like a crazy deck to have 59+% win rate. So kind of makes sense that there's nothing in there, and as people get better, things should average out, so it makes sense to me. First off, we have our tier 1s. So first up is LockJaw, most popular deck in this tier 1 placement, 6.3%. It's been up. All the numbers, I will say all the numbers are moving upwards because the collection level is better. So instead of 3,000, it's 4,000. That is going to make the players that are tracking data better on average. So that's just something to keep in mind. So all the numbers are moving up, but you can still see some trends within these data sets. So LockJaw is good. I mean, Lockdown's good. LockJaw is also good, but it got nerfed. But yeah, it might not be as good now that you're listening to this. If you're listening like halfway through March, you're like, LockJaw is horrible. I could see that also. But yeah, once again, Lockdown, still pretty good. It didn't really get affected by the OTAs, so that's something to keep in mind. You still have Goliath. Goliath being annoying. Doctor Doom's a great card, and a lot of like little pieces that just work. So definitely a list if you want to play. That has been good. Miss Marvel has just been strong. Zabu's just been strong. So these cards are just like crazy powerful. So not too surprised to see this up at the top. Next up, we have SheNaut. So once again, this is a pretty good list. The most popular list using Leech, but you do have some lists using Cosmo and things like that. Definitely more niche, but generally you Leech things. You play SheNaut Infinite turn 7. You win the game. It's pretty good. Some people are playing Kyra to protect your big cards if you need to. Some people are still using armor. Armor is nicer because you get an extra mana essentially to proc your Cyclops, proc your Sunspot, proc your Misty Knight. But Kyra is just safer. It means you can play your ones in different lanes and still protect your 6-cost cards. So generally still good. Its parlay went down, but its win rate still pretty solid. Cube rate still pretty good. So nothing too surprising there. Next up, we have Junk. So Junk is a big winner this particular patch. I do think it's more of the good matchup into what's popular. So the most popular archetypes right now are, well, as of recording, are Hela and Thanos LockJaw. Those are, I think, the two most popular. And clogging their board helps, right? Cog is great. Like making them draw bad, and Hela is horrible. Same thing with Darkhawk. I mean Thanos, making them draw is like just really bad. And even just putting these Hood, Sentry, and Nihilist plays are also very powerful. And Alliance is just a strong card if you can have priority. So makes sense. The win rate of Junk last month was really, really bad. Well, not really bad, but tier 3. So like that's what 52%, something like that, 53, 52. Jumped all the way to 57. Definitely the highest win rate in the data we collected. So that's pretty noticeable. I will say that its popularity also dropped down a cliff. So it used to be like 5-6% popularity. Now it's less than 1.4. So it looks like the people that really like Junk and really specialize in Junk continue to play Junk, and because of that its win rate is higher. So there's always that notion of mastery, like being very good at your particular champion or your particular deck, right? The more niche a deck is, the more the people that are actually specialized in knowing the ins and outs when to play these decks are actually more likely to be in the data. And that's probably what happened. The people that just played Junk because it was flavor of the month left, and the people that really liked the Junk archetype stayed in, and they are really good at the archetype and they're winning. So pretty cool to see. But yeah, definitely a big jump from one month to another. Next up, we have the tier 2. So those are the only 3 in tier 1. Tier 2, we have most popular is Destroy. Destroy, one of the most popular decks in the game. Very close to tier, well, not very close, but close enough to tier 2, but not enough to make it there. Still pretty good. Its win rate stayed the same. I would say that that's so in the data. It's actually kind of interesting because since we're tracking a higher level of player, like in terms of collection level, I would assume everything would go up a little bit. So to stay the same is actually a negative, in my opinion. That's how I look at the data. But it is still true. Like, okay, it's still pretty good win rate, but it is interesting. Popularity went down a little bit, but it was like super popular before. Maybe the Hulkbuster nerf actually mattered. I wasn't super sold on it being a reasonable nerf, but maybe it was. And the cube rate went up, which isn't too surprising as well. Next up, we have Thanos LockJaw, which is another big popularity with right now in the meta. So Blob, Thanos, LockJaw, I mean, it's still good, right? People got annoyed with the Blob nerf, but the Blob nerf, honestly, is still an insane card. It's like a 618, 616 all the time. It's still really good. Like, I don't really think it has issues too much. So still a very strong card. And if you like playing it, very good, very solid, good cube rate. If you like Thanos LockJaw, still strong. It did get nerfed, so LockJaw is going to be worse. I still think you can play LockJaw in Thanos decks, but that is to be determined, right? Maybe you'll know more than I do like a month later if you're looking at this. So yeah, definitely interesting. Next up, we have Hela. Hela, also a very popular archetype in the meta right now. This one, once again, also got nerfed. LockJaw is also being played in this. Very, very popular deck. 54% win rate here. Cube rate is very high. This is the most, like, if you can look at this, look at the games here, right? Almost 200,000 compared to like everything else, right? Like Destroy is also popular at half of that, right? So definitely one of, and this is a single deck, right? It's not like this is the whole archetype. This is one singular deck with the exact 12 cards is being played this much. So kind of crazy. But yeah, definitely a popular list. Definitely good. I do wonder how the LockJaw changes will make this, because the one issue is that playing the Ebony Blade is in the same spot as playing the LockJaw. So you kind of have to make a decision where before you didn't have to. So I do wonder how the win rates of this archetype is going to change, but I did want to mention it here. Next up, we have a Zabu beta build. So when I was looking, this showed up as like this showed up as a beta ray build, right? But this is essentially a Zabu beta ray build deck. There are other beta ray build decks that use LockJaw. This one just uses Zabu, and I would say this is, like, in the stats, this is the better version, in that having Zabu access to, you can play either Thor or beta ray build, and they both work in the same spot, like, is very powerful. And then you also get to play Darkhawk. Now this got nerfed, right? Like, so Darkhawk is nerfed once again, so this is definitely, you're going to feel it. So before, the Darkhawk was in its own spot where you don't really mess with Jane Foster. Now Jane Foster and Darkhawk are in the same spot, so it's not going to be as good. So I definitely think the win rate of this is going to suffer a bit, for sure. It's sad, but they're trying to give the metagame a fresh new feel. Darkhawk is getting hurt, and that hurts a lot of decks, because a lot of decks splash in Darkhawk. Almost a lot of Zabu decks, you splash in Darkhawk, and it works well. So this kind of hurts to see. But yeah. Moving on, we have Darkhawk. Hey, Darkhawk as well also got nerfed heavily, in my opinion, with the changes. So going from a 4-0 to a 5-4, I still think it's playable, but it loses a lot of that flexibility. That was really where Darkhawk was very good. You were very flexible to play with this card. Now you don't really have that. You also lose the synergy with Zabu, which hurts. And then it's just like Coring Rock Slide, Darkhawk on 4. It just becomes like a dino. So still a good card, but you have to rebuild all your decks now, which sucks. It was still doing good stats. Win rate didn't really change, which is interesting, right? I think that means it went down a little bit, but still strong, still good archetypes, so nothing sad to see. Next up was a surprise to me. Actually, when looking at the data, I did not expect this, but Galactus win rate jumped up massively from last month to this month. So last month, tier 5. That means it had a sub 50% win rate. So it was not doing well. But it looks like the people that like Galactus, they found a deck that works. Just play Junk, which is also very good, and then add Darkhawk. Add Galactus on top, right? And you can play things like Selene and all the goblins and whatever you want. So this version of Galactus seems to be doing well. It has good cube rate, right? If you can get Galactus a playoff. Usually what they try to do is they fill your lane with some junk. Just fill you, and then they guarantee the win, right? And it's not as on the final turn where before they would try to play Galactus and then win with big cards over the top. Now they fill a lane, and then Galactus final turn to win. So kind of an interesting way of doing it. Seems to work for them, so I still don't have Galactus. But yeah, big ups for them. Next up, we have High Evo. So High Evo actually went down because its win rate stayed the same, and I changed the win rates, like made it more rigid, so it loses a tier. It feels bad, but yeah, it's still the same in terms of win rates, still the same in terms of popularity. So still people like playing high evil. It's a different subset than the She-Hulk version, right? This one doesn't always run She-Hulk. The main difference with this one is it runs A bomb compared to the other ones run Infinite, right, instead of A bomb. So definitely good if you like this. It definitely feels more basic, I guess, to me compared to the other versions, just because the other ones have bigger, cooler cards. You know, this one's running Spider Woman, right? Not that it's a bad card, but it feels more basic. I'm being very biased here. It's a good deck if you want to play it. Next up, we have Shuri. Shuri, same old Shuri, reliable Shuri. It got nerfed to a 4-1, but really doesn't matter too much in terms of how Shuri plays. You play a 28 red skull into Taskmaster, you still win. You play a 16 power vision, you move it in Taskmaster, you still win. So still has that good value, right? The Sauron got nerfed, right? So Sauron used to be a 3-3, now it's a 3-2. Still being played, so it's still like the best way to play Shuri. Just nerfed a little bit, so yeah. Nothing crazy. Popularity is the same. Win rates went up just on account of, you know, it going up. Next up, we have Stature. So Stature, once again, its popularity is very low, so not that much people are playing Stature, but its win rate is also okay. Like it's decent. Tier 2 is definitely a good tier to be in. So it's just a solid deck. It's definitely niche. You don't really see it that much, but when you do see it, it seems to be working relatively well. So if you like Stature, here you go. Next up, we have Bounce. So Bounce is something that went down a little bit. So this was the Black Swan deck, essentially. And, you know, its win rate isn't super great. So even though it's a Season Pass card, they usually want Season Pass cards to do super well. I would say this one didn't really change the meta too much, right? People tried Black Swan, but honestly, like regular Bounce is perfectly fine. I will say, like, it's in the best, like, the high win rate. Like, Black Swan's in the high win rate Bounce deck, so it might just be more of a notion of Bounce itself being weak right now, more than Black Swan being weak. Though they are nerfing cards, so maybe, you know, Black Swan or Bounce will get a little bit better in the future. But yeah, definitely interesting. Next up, we have Sera Control. I actually like Sera Control a lot. I'm kind of sad to see it being like so down. In my opinion, there was a time it was like high top best deck, or high tier best deck, but now it's like more like average, more like you have to be in the right meta for it. Still like a lot of these cards. It's nice to shut. You know, like if you're a blue Magic player, this is Sera Control. You know, just shut down everything they want to do. Something interesting is that Ghost is playable, right? So they did buff Ghost. Well, they changed Ghosts, and they were saying, oh, maybe this will see play. Definitely think that the 3-5 stat line is good enough that you might want to play it. And going second in this deck makes sense, right? You want to make sure your Killmonger is last. You want to make sure your Shang-Chi Enchantress is last, right? So your Shadow King is last. So this actually makes sense of a deck where you would play Ghost. So kind of cool to see, like, hey, there is a place where Ghost is actually performing, giving people an edge where Ghost really never saw play before. So yeah. Next up, we have Loki. So Loki, tier 3, a little bit sad. It moved up a tier. It used to be tier 4. So its win rate actually went up quite a bit. So that's cool to see. Cube rate also went up quite a bit, so that's cool to see. Popularity stays the same, so there's definitely some Loki stands out there that just like playing Loki, stealing your cards, playing your cards against you. You know, good for them. I have no opinions. But yeah, Loki's strong. This particular deck has a 63% win rate, and I don't know why. It's probably just RNG of Iron Lad like winning the game for them, because other than that, I'm not really sure why this one has 63. But yeah, definitely Loki, still good, still okay. It's definitely not as problematic as it used to be. At least it was the best deck in the game for a while. Now we have discard. Hey, discard. There's a lot of discard cards being added. Proxima just got added as well. Win rate went up, obviously. Cube rate went up. The probability actually went down, mostly due to, first of all, Hela taking all of the discard players. Like, Hela is the most popular, and it's technically a destroy archetype, but it has its own archetype, so it doesn't count here. And Meek was really what made discard popular last month. Like, Meek was really what was causing it. Now that all the people that have tried Meek are like okay with that, they're on to new things, the popularity of discard just went down. So still okay. I do think it might get better. There's definitely some people trying traditional discard with Proxima, and it seems to be promising. So definitely something to look into. But that's what we have for discard currently as of recording. Next up, we have Thanos Zoo. So if you like playing aggressive Thanos, playing your one draws, playing Khazar, playing Blue Marvel, playing Spectrum, not Onslaught though, right? I feel like Onslaught might be better, but Onslaught's played in the traditional Zoo decks, not in this one. Usually you go for Spectrum, but yeah, when everything went up, not surprising, but it's not super common to see this, even though the probability is pretty high. It's usually just a collection of niche-ish decks. And the first one's even more of a LockJaw deck, even though that one got nerfed. So definitely interesting to see. M-Man got buffed. That might be cool to see. Maybe play other things, but generally, if you like playing Zoo, you could play this version. It's usually more popular than playing Zoo without Thanos, though I do think that is still pretty good. Well, that's all relative. Like, if I'm comparing it to tier 1 decks, it's not good. But generally, Khazar is a good thing to try if you like playing that. Next up, we have Surfer. So Surfer's it's moved a little bit away from Shaw. Another thing about Surfer is I'm collecting data from the month. The Power Couples event really affected Surfer. Some of the best decks, or is that this standard list, right? This is a Power Couples list, absolutely, right? This was the most popular Surfer list in play, and it's just a Power Couples list. You have Fantastic, Invisible Women, this is a Power Couples list, right? So what does that mean for Surfer, right? This is the most popular list the whole month, is a Power Couples list. Kind of sad, honestly. And the win rates also stayed the same, which is, in my opinion, negative. So kind of interesting to see, but what can you do, right? Surfer doing Surfer things. All right. Next up, we have Thor LockJaw. So this is another kind of Beta Ray Bill-esque deck. But instead of using Zabu, you're using LockJaw. And I said this one's a little bit worse than the previous one. It's still okay. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to have deleted the average because this is a new list. But generally, that's what we have here. Thor LockJaw. It's basically using Thor and Beta Ray Bill with the LockJaw. This is kind of dead now because LockJaw got nerfed. It hurts to see, but LockJaw was being played in a lot of decks, right? So it was just very impactful. So you're gonna have to try something a little bit different, or just don't play beta. I know people who actually play this are like, "What are you talking about? I'm gonna be playing my card." Just find a different list for sure. Next up, we have Black Knight. So this is Black Knight without Hela, essentially, using the other discard pieces to play your Ebony Blade. This works well. I would say the Hela decks are statistically better, statistically more popular, but it's always nice to do something different and try to find your own way. So pretty cool. If you like playing Black Knight no Hela, you can definitely do that. It works. It's just statistically not as good as the one that has thousands and thousands of plays. Next up, we have Move. sad move. Silky smooth move is really the way to go in move. You don't really see too much people playing the traditional move. At least it's not enough that it shows up in the data sets. Usually when you're talking about move, it's just silky smooth move. And even that version of move is not that popular, though. I would say that version of move has way better stats. If you look at the stats, 57%, 8%, that's like very meaningful for stats. But it's all the other move decks that are bringing move down average, right? Like if you could cut away silky smooth move in the untapped data, I feel like that would be quite high, probably tier 2 or so instead of tier 3. So kind of interesting to see. But yeah, that's the stats on move. We're just hoping maybe Vulture would do something. But the problem is, once again, you're not really playing Vulture in this deck. You're playing Vulture in traditional move. And maybe that helps, right? Maybe that'll bump up the numbers, things like that. So we'll have to see. And next up, we have Thanos. Regular Thanos. No LockJaw shenanigans. No Zoo shenanigans. Though they're in the same tier. Still good, right? You still have Blob. You still have all the other silly Thanos stuff, but it's not as broken, right? Like Thanos really is like playing your stones into the LockJaw and getting free Infinite out of it. Like that's really where everyone starts throwing up, you know. But regular Thanos, it's still good, just not as broken, but still something to play if you like it. And always take a look at the decks themselves, right? Usually there'll be some decks in there with some crazy win rates. You might want to take it to a spin, or you want to try something new. Always try it, see if you like it. There's a lot of player error in the decks, so if you like how a deck looks, you could definitely pilot it better than the average for sure. You know, you're better than the average probably. You're watching this video, so I believe in you. So if you like how a deck looks, go ahead and try it out, see how it goes. Next up, we've got Bast Patriot. So do you want to say, like, once again, this is one of those like. The second the win rate list is very high win rate, but a very low play rate, so it could just be variance. But it is something to be noticed, like that you can have 65. Ooh, I hit something. 65% win rate, very very high. So these are some of the things to take advantage of. But yeah, it's ever since I think Jeff made that video, a lot of people have been like, there's always this niche section that's like trying it, and I like the list. I think it's elegant. I think it makes sense. I like all the cards in there essentially. So always fun to play if you like playing Patriot, even though Patriot's really not that popular, which is sad because I think the card's cool, but well, maybe it's not. You know? Yeah, but yeah. Anyways, it's a fun deck. Moving on, we have Cerebro 5 actually. Cerebro 5 is actually better than like the best Cerebro that we've seen so far. It was not in the data last month, but is in the data this month. So people weren't playing it last month. You can see the 140 games. That was the highest played deck last month. 140 games though, like for that patch, like kind of crazy. Here you can see it's been played a little bit more. 880 is still very niche, but it seems to be doing well in the games. People are trying Omega Red. You can see the difference from last month to this month. First thing off, Luke Cage got changed, right? So people are still playing Luke Cage, but now it's a little bit better. It's basically an extra power. And then also Omega Red. So people are trying Omega Red instead of Miss Marvel. Usually because Omega Red's a little bit more flexible to play. You don't have to play in the middle lane, things like that. So that seems to be working for people. And as well as Miss Marvel not getting the buffs, right? So Miss Marvel is a 4/4 instead of a 4/5, so you lose that buff. So definitely interesting to see. But yeah, Cerebro 3. It's pretty good if you want to play Cerebro, because you can win without the Cerebro card, which is pretty important. Next up, we have Iron Patriot. So Iron Patriot is basically Forge, Brood, Absorbing Man. That's what Iron Patriot means to me. And it's decent, right? Its win rate is still solid. If you can get the combo off, it's good. So if you got Forge got changed, right? But I don't think it affects this deck as much, but it does affect the deck somewhat, right? Like it means Mr. Sinister isn't as good of a curve. So maybe you want to change that card. Some of the decks are playing American Chavez, so you don't really have to change any of the cards. It still works, but that is something to keep in mind. Still good. Cube rate's high. Deck wins. Don't really have a problem. Next up, we have Tribunal. So Tribunal actually got better. It used to be tier 5, so under 50%. Now it's tier 4, so not under 50%. Still has issues in that it dies to itself. Like, that's usually a lot of these combo decks, they die to themselves. Like, if you have the combo, you win. If you have the combo, you can't win. You don't have enough power. You don't do anything. So that's some of the issues there, but still pretty good. Still doing okay. Trucking along. If you like combo decks, you can definitely do well in things like Conquest. If you play Conquest, like, the combo decks can do well, because if they don't have an answer, if they don't have an enchantress or anything like that, you just win. So there's definitely some value to playing these type of decks. Next up, we have Elemental Ramp. So this got revived, probably due to Corvus Ramp reviving this deck, even though it's not in the data set, because it's not, I don't know why it's not in the data set, but yeah, that's my thoughts. Like, people were trying Corvus Ramp, and then they just played Ramp itself, and you can see both of them are Galactus. So it's just a Galactus take, essentially. But yeah, now it's in the data set. Still pretty low win rate, honestly. 50.9 isn't super impressive. 1.6 popularity. It's essentially a Galactus deck, though. It's not essentially a Galactus deck, but it has Galactus tendencies. They're still playing Leader. Who plays Leader? Next up, we have Black Swan. So this essentially is the Black Swan without balance, without the Falcon, that type. Essentially, it looks like to be Dracula dump. I definitely like this type of archetype, playing Dracula dump. But you can see, like, its most popular decks win rates under 50%, which is a pretty bad sign. So not the strongest deck to be playing. I do love, playing Dracula dump. I'd love to see, like, a version of it that's, like, super strong or consistent, but it is relying on hitting Dracula. It is relying on having these big cards as your top decks or as your final card. So it's definitely not as consistent as I would love it to be, but it's a cool archetype if you like playing that. And it does show, like, Black Swan, because it's covering all the Black Swan decks. Isn't as crazy of a season pass card as maybe Secondary would like to hope. So what can you do? Maybe we'll see it, like, return as like a 2-4 or something like that. I don't know. Next up, we have Cerebro 2. So Cerebro 2, not super popular. One of the niche archetypes, but still does its job. Stats. This is one of with the stats just being flat, right? Like, throughout, like, hey, 3-2 players, they're a 0.4% subset. They know who they are. They know their win conditions. They just do what they do. The big downside, I think, of Cerebro 2 is that you are capped. Like, there's a ceiling of how good you can be in terms of how big your power is, right? So you have 2 power, and then you have Cerebro Mystique. So everything is 6 power, and then you have Blue Marvel. Everything is 7 power. Like, that's as good as it gets. You have 28 power in a lane. If someone can put 29 in power in a lane, you can't beat it. You're screwed. They're done. You're done. So they play Shuri. If they play Red Skull, you're losing anyway. So they play Shuri something. You're done. Though, it's just. There's just nothing you can do about it. So that's just some of the issues with Cerebro 2, where 28 power is like doable to win a lane for sure. Whereas, like, 30 plus, that's really where it gets kind of hard. So that's kind of the issue there. But yeah, definitely an archetype that people like to play. Well, not that many people, but some people like to play. Then we have Patriot. How the Mightiest Fall. This used to be, like, quite good, but once again, it's capped by its basic status. Like, it's capped by having cards that do nothing, right, but exist. So you don't really have a lot of flexibility in what you're doing. You're just like, I play a big guy, and I play another big guy, and I play a slightly smaller big guy. Like, that's really all you got. It is cool. The high win rate one does use Ultron, which I like to see. I think that card is very cool, at least the variant I have. So yeah, but yeah, definitely not the most impressive deck in the world. But if you do like being a Patriot, you could definitely run something like that. And then finally, we have our tier 5s, the under 50% decks. First one we have is negative, staying on its trend of being under 50% win rate. Unfortunate, but yeah, if you like negative, you have to just make sure that you're snapping when the wins are given to you. When you get, Zabu into negative or Ravonna into negative, when you hit those, that's when you really take advantage and snap. Next up, we have Hela Tribunal. So its win rate went up, and its cube rate went very high. Went quite a bit, so that's good to see as well. So if you like playing combo decks, this is the quintessential combo deck. If you have the combo, you win. If you don't have the combo, you don't win. And if they have a counter to your combo, you also don't win. So hopefully they don't have all that, and you have what you got. But yeah, the cube rate is high, meaning that people who play this deck are snapping properly. So that's good to see. So it's not a deck that doesn't work. It's just like you have to make sure you're snapping properly. Like that's a really important part of playing a deck like this. And next up, we have Phoenix. So this used to be like the worst deck that we recorded last month. I don't think it is. It might be still, actually. No, it's not. It's not the worst deck in win rate anymore, but it's still not good. So it's still not something I recommend. You're playing yourself a lot of times, and you still lose to Shang-Chi and Shadow King like horribly. So that's kind of the issues there. It's just like, even when you win, you still have you might stab for 8 cubes and get Shadow King to death, and that just hurts so hard. So those are some of the problems there, but still, if you like playing this type of deck, like I'm not gonna judge you. It's just like there are clear problems. Same thing with Wong, right? You can definitely win, and there's some really powerful ways to do it, but it just has like these big weaknesses where you think you're at advantage, but if they have the right tools, you just get blown up. So that's just the scary part of it, right? Like you play Black Panther, Wong Black Panther, they Shang-Chi you, and you play Zola. It's just like, oh my god, right? So you just have to be very careful. But yeah, it's definitely strong if you have the combo, and you can definitely win off of 3 cards. Like Wong Panther Zola is very good, 32 power in 2 lanes or more, depending on like how lucky you are with the flip. So yeah, just keep that in mind. The next up, we have Cerebro 3. So Cerebro 3 is not doing well. You can see its most common deck list is negative cube rate, so it's just not a good sign. Hopefully there are new cards to make this better. I say this every time, but I don't really know if there are going to be enough tools to make Cerebro 3 work. Cerebro 2 at least can summon multiple cards all the time. You can play Brood, right, which is really good for Cerebro 2. Cerebro 3 doesn't really have that, like a signature 3-cost card that really changes the metagame. You think things like Killmonger, you think things like Shang-Chi would do it, but like it's hard because usually you want to be playing Valkyrie on the final turn. Same thing with Shang-Chi, so you have to like fight that urge, and etc. etc. You need Bast for setup. Like there's a lot of pieces that are required for it to be working out super well. No, you can still do it. People still play it, but its stats aren't impressive. So overall, those are the decks. There's a lot of them, as there should be, but it's nice to see like a healthy meta. It's not super healthy. Like there's still things that are way better than others, but it's nice to see that. And maybe the LockJaw, Darkhawk, Forge, OTA changes will make the some of the weaker decks shine. Things like the Balance and Black Swan. Maybe those decks will shine during this patch, but we'll have to see. Only time will tell us. But those are the decks that we recorded for the month of February, going into the March season. So hope you guys enjoy it. Take care of yourselves and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Educatedcollins snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you tomorrow snap. Your skills will be